Frank the Writer is the 6th episode of the first season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Paul Lazarus, and needless to say, this focuses on Frank, who is a brilliant character. And Frank's quite happy in a lot of this, which is a rarity, and it's very nice to see. And there will be spoilers from this point on as I go into some detail about the narrative. I'll get in with Frank's part of the story in a moment, but we have a subplot involving Robert and the fact that he doesn't think Michael likes him anymore. There's a little bit of humour there. For me, the highlight with that part was when Debra called Robert over to spend time with Michael, and Raymond kind of accidentally reveals that it was Geoffrey. It's not the most fascinating narrative, but it works well enough as a bit of padding. The main narrative focuses on Frank, but before I mention that, actually, the intro involves a basketball player called Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I don't know who it is. I don't know anything about basketball at all. But that seems like kind of a big deal. This is the first time we've had, I think the first time we've had a sports personality in the show. So that's kind of awesome, I guess. As I said, I don't know anything about basketball, but it was certainly a very different way to start things. But then the main narrative kicks in, and this involves Frank, who is basically challenged with writing something to submit to the Reader's Digest. And there's this brilliant scene where he's laughing, basically cackling to himself, and then it cuts to 3 weeks later, and he's had a joke published in Reader's Digest, and he's really happy about this, and he was paid, I think, $300, and we hear the joke. I won't share it, but it was interesting enough, and it's great to see him happy. For me, watching this as a writer, there are a lot of emotions that I could relate to with Frank, and certainly Frank's enthusiasm was really infectious. But Ray's not feeling it because Frank starts to interfere with Ray's work. He's writing a column about the Giants. Frank is leaning over his shoulder, trying to comment on everything that he does. But it's hard to be annoyed at him because, as he says, he has this whole new lease on life. And it's the first time after his retirement, or certainly in a long time, that he's actually felt good. And I love that it could encourage anybody who's maybe in retirement, looking for something to put their energy into. If they try writing and enjoy it, I think that that's a really beautiful thing. And I love that Frank is really enjoying this. Unfortunately, things don't completely go Frank's way, and he tries to get Ray to submit something to his editor. Raymond doesn't really want to do this, but he does it, and ultimately the feedback isn't great. And Frank has to admit that he'd already submitted it to Reader's Digest and basically got the same response. And obviously I don't like seeing Frank hurt, but I love the fact that it shows that there are ups and downs, as there are in any career, but certainly as a writer, you may submit many, many things and get rejection after rejection. And even if you submit something that's accepted, it doesn't necessarily mean you've turned a corner and everything after that will be accepted. If you submit one thing and then you submit something else and it's rejected, it doesn't mean that you're less of a writer or your quality's gone downhill. It's not necessarily the case, and I like that the episode is really showing that. And we had a beautiful moment where Frank asked Raymond what he thought of what Frank had written, and Raymond says he likes it. And ultimately, Frank was just looking for Raymond's approval as a writer and as his son. And it was very, very sweet. So it's a really good episode, really funny, really entertaining. But as a writer, I also found it to be motivational and also reassuring that, let's face it, any writer will have peaks and troughs in their career where things go well, things don't go quite so well. And Frank certainly experiences the whole range of emotions that can come with that. Definitely a really good episode. Frank the Writer is one I'm sure I'll always enjoy.